let's talk about Lankhmar, City of Adventure, the first edition thereof by Bruce Nesmith, Douglas Niles and Ken Rolston. There was a revised edition of this released for second edition, with second edition livery by Anthony Pryor. I'll offer some comments at the end. I don't have a hard copy of it. But this is, I think, though there are literally some quite good things about the second edition, this is the superior version of the two. It's frustrating. It's one of those classic, why can't you just have the best of both worlds? This is a 96-page city book with an extra, so it is more than 96 pages, an extra 32 pages here in a little booklet, and which I'll explain when we get there, and a full colour map of the city, which I'll just show you a section of. It's quite nice. I actually quite like that it's matte as well. I prefer it being matte to, I feel like City of Brawl, Rock of Brawl, sorry, which is a city supplement I quite like, is gloss. Quite a lot of them are actually as well. Sigil, in the Cage Sigil is, for instance, as well. And I actually think the matte has some real value to it, for not, basically maybe it's my glasses. But yes, this is a city supplement with some sort of pointers towards developing city adventures, which I'll be talking about soon on the channel, so look around for when I chat with Prince of Nothing about that, about city adventures. But here it's a good city supplement. It's a very good city supplement, actually. I think it's in my kind of top 10 or something, or 15. It's not absolutely top tier for a few reasons I'll get to, but it is very, very good. And it's better than what you'd think. It's 1985 is one hopeful thing. Is it's at a point where Doug Niles is one of the writers, and Doug Niles, obviously Against the Cult of the Reptile God most famously, put together some decent stuff. Ken Rolston and Bruce Nesmith I wouldn't closely associate from this era with lots of classics. But though there are problems with this, it basically does a lot of very interesting things and does them pretty competently. A city supplement, I think, it's hard, and this is part of what I'll be discussing with Prince of Nothing, but city supplements / city adventures have an odd job because they are doing many things, and they're prone to prolixity, they're prone to trying to do things that you end up not needing, you know, and they're trying to cover a lot of ground and lots of things that different DMs might want. And here basically this is mostly about the city of Lankhmar, where Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser fictionally go. It covers a bit of the world of Nehwon beyond that. This was actually something which was licensed. So in the infamous Deities and Demigods incident, where the first couple of printings included the Cthulhu mythos and the Elric, the Amonabenean mythos as well, the Elric mythos, and then they got, I think technically possibly they had permission for Elric, but it wasn't completely secure, and they didn't have permission for Cthulhu. They did have permission for Nehwon, and you can look at that and Legends and Lore for kind of Gods of Nehwon, which is where these guys come from. The cover's a bit odd. I quite like the kind of the star for Fafhrd. Is not amazing art. Weirdly, there is different art between the two editions as well, which I'm not quite sure about. But here, this does include cover art by Keith Parkinson and interior illustrations by Jeff Easley. This is a better Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser, presumably by Easley. I mean, it looks a lot like him. So yeah, yes, it is him. Yes, so you get 10 chapters, weirdly interspersed at points with other things which is not clear if they're chapters or not. Has a general description about adventuring. It's got the city districts itself, the main city book. It's got a world book, 5 pages of Nehwon Beyond Lankhmar. Rules about characters for 13 pages. 8 pages of factions and guilds. 5 pages of gods. 5 pages of monsters. 14 pages of adventuring rules. And 3 pages of AD&D conversion rules for Nehwonian campaigns. There are a bit like Dragon Lance Adventures or Forgotten Realms Adventures. There may be slightly different, I mean this is more different than those, but there might be slight differences that you need to bear in mind when creating or converting characters. And then 6 pages, or 5 pages in fact, because, or 5 pages of, no, 6 technically, of adventures in Lankhmar. This other book is half of it is geomorphs. The rest of it is record sheets of different kinds, and we'll explain that as we go. This is an appendix, basically, for doing things that it says to do. So Lankhmar is the city of thieves, and it's a kind of grim, gritty, somewhat funny, dirty, scummy city. Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser are heroes. Fafhrd particularly is actually personally heroic. They are kind of mostly good guys, but they get into lots of scrapes. They're not always good. Strictly speaking, great fictional books about friendship, I think, actually, those ones. It starts, Adventures in Lankhmar is mostly summaries of their of the fiction. The first 6 books, and the 7th book haven't been published at this point. So it's summaries of the short stories in those, or the novellas in those. Spoilers abroad. In the 2nd edition one, what's added to that chiefly is a summary of products that had come out for Lankhmar to that point, which I don't see. This gets decent ratings. I don't see the other stuff getting massively good ratings, and the last time I looked at any of them was years ago. The city districts. So you have a big black and white city map here with all these gaps. They are the same on the colour map, but you can see there, there's little squares. Basically, when you get into the back streets, if it's any sort of deep back street, except in certain northerly districts, basically, in the Temple district, and so on. I guess technically the Marsh district, which is up there too. But virtually all the city, where you get into the inner streets, there's no detail on the big map. This means the players get that and don't know what's inside, and that's fine. That's a good thing, not a bad thing, because they don't know what's coming. What you are meant to then do is the DM gets a district record, and the players also get a district record, and they record these district records. What they found in each of these spaces, special keys, where NPCs live. Basically, they build up a picture of your own Lankhmar, and you are picking a geomorph. So that's a sleazy district geomorph of quite close, tight stuff. There is a wealthy geomorph, there's a marketplace geomorph, and I think this is one of the things that's in the random tables one as well, potentially, I'm not sure. But there's, maybe not, there's a ruin geomorph. There's all kinds of things that you can throw into the back streets, and there's a randomization thing to kind of rotate them. Obviously, this is in a way trivial, whatever. But I think the idea that all these back streets, though there aren't enough geomorphs to be unique to every back street, you use these geomorphs to fill out a unique area, and also the players don't know about it going in. You could hypothetically basically pre-assign all of these, or they could have pre-assigned all of them, but I think the fact it's randomized is fine. Each district has a page or two of 2-column text, quite small, about the establishments there. This, I'll read a sample, I guess. The Blue Moon. This establishment is owned and run by Crownus the Hag, who tells fortunes and predicts the future for a few bronze aggles. The building is run down and ramshackle, covered with faded blue paint. Her reputed abilities are likened to the Lankhmar phrase, even a blind marsh leopard gets a bird every now and then. Unknown to most of her patrons, she possesses real ability. She is able to use the spell effect of an augury spell once a month. When she does this, she ages 6 months. She charges for a true one, between 50 to 500 gold rilks. The building's only 2 stories tall. Or again, gives you stuff about, getting astrology done for you at the Astrologers Guild, or you go to the Festival District and the Black Rose is an apothecary and herbalist shop, which, Tonem specialises in unusual potions for the serious celebrator. Tonem's son Glish has a similar shop in the Plaza of Dark Delights. So on and so forth. Pulg's Tavern. This building is home, business and secret office for Pulg the Church Extortionist. So there's lots of locations. Some of them drawn from the stories. Many of them are, I think, potentially most of them. I think some are original. I'm not certain off the top of my head. But, it's certainly heavily drawing on the fiction. And it's saying, here's just a place. These are the things that are possible here. It's obviously meant to give ideas to the DM. It certainly feels like a place you could have lots of adventures. There's certainly plenty of ideas of people who have, where their treasure is, or the kinds of interests they have. It's more or less what you'd expect for a city guide, and it does it efficiently. In terms of text to page, I prefer this. Yeah, I think basically a problem I find, and I've reviewed other slightly later city supplements on this channel. I'll hopefully be doing FR1 Waterdeep and the North soon, which is another is technically a first edition supplement. But those later ones suffer from the problems lots of later books do, of using, basically they use much larger text and more illustrations, and encourage quite a high word count to do with like stuff that you realise, you know, you're adding on a sentence or two which you don't need, or you're adding in extra fluff words you don't need, and it doesn't add to the adventurability of the location. Here, the text is small, it's usually pretty condensed, it's not exciting, it's not well written, it's just all competent. There are, I should say, lots of typographical errors throughout this. I won't mention that again, probably. But yeah, when I say it's all readable, it is, but occasionally there are literally errors. But yeah, so this is all very functional and useful, and you can create your own city, and that's fun. You then get Nehwon Beyond Lankhmar, which is 51 locations. Oh no, it's not. It's 43 locations. I think the second one is 52 locations, though I think it partly does that by splitting out the keys where there are sub keys and stuff. I don't think it adds lots of locations to the big map. For Nehwon Beyond Lankhmar, the map is a simple, reasonably usable map there. It's not very exciting. It's not, you know, it's fine for the players at some level to have something like it. It's not giving you much adventurability in the key. It's a paragraph to an entire place, and so there's a degree to which this is a taster that you just have to invent everything for. You know, you get some stuff with monsters, but yeah. Again, you know, that's stuff where there is a bit more detail in the second edition. The character section is weirdly 5 heroes or characters from the stories, which are there for you basically to have as characters. There's an interesting thing about them being multi-class, the way that these are all humans, but they multi-class, and it's partly because there are no non-human races, intelligent races that are playable in Lankhmar, in Nehwon. They give them each at 3 ages, so you can play Fafnir and the Grey Mouser when they're peak, mature or youths. They're each triple class, and the others, 2 of them are single class, one is double class, let's call it. There's like obviously a special set of rules for that, which is mentioned briefly later. The NPCs, it's a long list of NPCs, mostly not statted. A couple are statted, so Hisvat the Were-Rat, for instance, they are levelled, and Hisvin the Were-Rat. They are levelled, however, so you can extrapolate. The second edition does have more stats for the NPCs, and that's probably preferable. So chapter 4, that's just lots of characters, and it's, in terms of getting ideas for people for them to interact with, again, it's functioning as an ideas mine. I think what we have so far is a lot of ideas. You can read the adventure summaries and get adventure ideas. You can read the building summaries and get building ideas. You can get the NPC summaries and get NPC ideas. The factions, there's a brief moment where it looks like it's heading towards a very useful kind of like, oh, let's have a faction game with 3 major factions. They mention the government, the mercantile, and the guild. Then they just move on to describing the guilds in a way that is inefficient enough that it's the only thing the second edition, as far as I can think of, really compresses rather than cuts, because it just makes it into a very brief list. But you can see like an entry is you know, 1/8 of a column, which isn't actually that much. It doesn't waste that much space, but I think it's more than it needs. The Artificers Guild mentions how much it takes to enter and its dues, and then whether it has any attached guilds, and what social rank you get at the 4 levels of rank. There are rules for social level just in the next chapter, I think. Yeah, lots of stuff about guilds. I'm not sure it's super worth the time. It doesn't waste too much space. It's only a few pages, but I think it's meant to say, look, the fact that the Thieves Guild are, you know, have a rivalry with the Fencers Guild or something, that's kind of cool. Or you know, there's the thing where I think it's that the shipwrights and starmen and navigators or something like that don't let the... this might be in the location thing, but don't let carpenters drink there or something. That's interesting, at their guild tavern. It has information about the army and navy of Lankhmar, which is useful. That's quite a nice, easily illustration. So it's nicely illustrated. The cartography is by Jeff Valley and Curtis Smith, additional maps, Tracy Hickman and Curtis Smith. Hickman, obviously, a genuinely competent cartographer. A story about death gods and the hand of fate. I don't know if that's by Lieber or not. I kind of assume not, because I don't think it mentions that. I assume that's just by the authors. I don't know. I don't recognise it. Maybe I've read it and forgotten it. Then there's stuff about Lankhmar gods, and this is a sort of Pratchettian gods who gain power from worshippers. There are gods beyond the laws of necessity and the force of chance rule even the gods. They are more like the great gods of other settings. You know, cool, if you like, really that's order and chaos, isn't it, in more Cockean terms. But yes, they each have a relative, like a cultural rank, their importance, where they influence, worshipper alignment, and small amount of information. Sometimes they have stats for an appearance. So, for instance, if the gods of Lankhmar appear to defend Lankhmar, or you break into the thieves' house and fight the dead master thieves, there are stats. This is useful. It's very colourful, and it's a good way of having it collated in one place. Though there are technically, for some of them, game features, most of it is still flavoury. This is a relative fragility, and the second edition adds in specialty priesthood information, which, if you like, that is useful. It's an odd thing where obviously what's happened in terms of Lankhmar City of Adventure is that they've gone, this is a cool setting, we've got a cool idea for how you can run a city, and we'll just attach it to lots of setting information, because that's what people want. People are here to enjoy the setting. They're not here to, like, hopefully they're here to get, it's 85, they're still just about believing in gaming as the chief purpose of Dungeons and Dragons. But there's some sense perhaps they like, you know, this is a licensed product, this is one we're actually allowed to publish. You know, Conan was another. We want them to be like, man, I've learned so much about Lankhmar, to feel that you can imagine there's just, or at least that's how editorially it comes out. Just get the information down, you know, get it there. That's all we need. And you can see that being part of a trend towards less and less gameable products. This is gameable, because actually, practically, because the gods aren't fighting the heroes, you don't need loads of stats for them. You don't need avatars for them. Where there are a couple of cases you might actually come into contact with them, there are stats or there are rules. Like similarly, Tyre, the fact that Tyre can descend in avatar form upon her priestess, that's covered, you know, in rules terms. Chapter 7, Nehwon's Monsters. This is a big, fairly, for the context, fairly long, 2, 4, 5 pages. Only 5 pages, but it feels very efficient. It's monster manual, first edition style. Second edition turns this into monstrous compendium pages, which layout-wise are really helpful and well put together, but often overwritten. But yeah, you have astral wolves, birds of Tyre, ice gnomes, cold women and their cold spawn, gladiator lizards, night gaunts, giant worms, skeletal bats, lots of monsters. They're quite fun. Most of these ones have special abilities. And though I don't think you need to constantly have the spiced up extra ability monsters or whatever to make combat and encounters interesting in AD&D, I think two things. One, I think it's like, in this case, it makes it distinctive. You know, you're in Nehwon, there's fewer of the monsters you know about. There'll be some, you know, there are wolves, but there are fewer of them. I think the Remirage comes up in the encounter tables quite a lot that come in the second edition. I'll mention that again in a second, actually. But the, most of the memorable encounters are going to be with specific Nehwon monsters. And you're going to be like, wow, this is Nehwon, rather than the Realms, rather than Greyhawk, rather than Planescape, or whatever. I think, the second reason this is positive is because actually it's something where providing different challenges to the player, you know, partly maybe it's simply surrendering to short attention spans in the kids these days, but I think it is also something that helps with keeping the ludic challenge fresh. There's two ways of freshening it. One is new situations, the other is new content, like new things. A new situation is the orcs aren't a raiding band, but you are having to attack their fort, you know, that sort of thing. Or you've attacked an orcish fort in the past, but now this is something you're you're higher level, and there's 400 orcs led by ogres, and in fact their leader is a frost giant or something, and instead of a fort it's a ice palace, and everyone's really cold apparently. So it's a completely different environment with different challenges within there, and as you're at a high level, you're just going to be dealing in terms of your power level is so different in terms of what you try to deal with. The video game, it strikes me, a video game I have 100% completion on and achievements on Xbox on actually. The More does a good job of this actually, where the More, who is the creature you're kind of controlling to go around destroying the bad guys, grows and grows during the course of the game, basically. And eventually the stuff that used to be dangerous is tiny, and that's part of how you shift. You know, you develop both new contexts and new difficulty contexts, both environmental and difficulty contexts. But also you just add in new stuff, and Gary does that all the time. You know, you're adding in and some of those are the infamous hosing creatures like the Disenchanter or the Rust Monster, things that actively counter things players like to do. And that's not to a specific player group, but it's to create something in the meta, in the environment. And so yeah, setting unique and new challenges. There are no wilderness encounter tables in this. They are mentioned twice, they are not included. There are a few other things which are not included. There is not a flow chart for encounters in the city, and there is not there are not the human racial adjustments, because they're meant to be 4 or 5 instead of demi-human races, human ethnicities, which I know some people may find distasteful. I think it more or less jams, I think, with the ludic purpose of the demi-human races, whatever else you think about it. Those are not in here. They are in the second edition. The second edition has decent encounter tables, particularly actually it has excellent encounter tables for Lankhmar itself. Like really interesting sub-tabled, like you can meet 10 different classes of thing on your encounters, you know, courtesans, adventurers, thieves, and then you are on a sub-table to find out what courtesan, adventurer or thief or whatever you meet. Is really good. The actual tables, the encounter tables, are pretty, you could come up with them yourself. So in that sense, they're not missing much, other than they've done the work, and it's annoying that they screwed this up. You know, that's an annoying screw up. The same with missing they mentioned about being in the Rainbow Palace of the Overlord. And they're like, oh, you know, use the flowcharts. There are no flowcharts, so good luck. You know, you're fine. You can make it up. You're a good DM, but nonetheless. Adventuring in Lankhmar has campaign uses for the city, social level rules, including rules for gaining or losing. This is obviously parallel to things like honour in Oriental Adventures of the same period. Money, prices, there are rules for basically if the average price on an item goes up, if a market becomes worse, it fluctuates in a season, your haggling score becomes worse. You know, there's a penalty to your haggling, and your the buying and selling table, the haggling result you get modified by reaction and modified by market, depends what you can buy and sell for, basically. That's fun. I like that as a mechanic. You can see kind of classic tables for that sort of thing. It does say you should force players to roleplay this out, and of course there's a degree of amusement and enjoyment in that occasionally, but it's a blind alley. It's not the same thing as the game itself, and so that's less good. Money changes, money lenders, fees, taxes, and ways of getting out of taxes. What happens, how fire works mechanically in a city, which is really quite helpful actually, and rules for breaking the law, including a reaction check modifier table for well, it's, yeah, well, it's not reaction check, it's 2d6, add the level of the lawyer and modify it according to witnesses, social level, physical evidence. And then there are penalties, including the alternative fines you can pay, debt, bribery, a calendar, festivals. This is all useful. Like the calendar, it tends to be less useful for the players because what you'll find is that your players will always be asking when a date is. I actually tend to therefore have on campaign record sheets for my players in my games, if there are timers, training, recovery, when I just finished a siege scenario, reinforcements arriving, predictions. I put those on there so the players didn't have to be like, oh, I didn't record that. When is it? Because I don't know what the calendar means. Calendars are less useful, but other things either give you ideas, the festivals do, or they give you actual rules. This is full of rules, and it's something which, say, Rock of Bral or In the Cage, both review them on the channel. In the Cage I think is actually pretty mediocre. Rock of Bral I actually think is pretty good in lots of ways without being amazing, but like they don't have a lot of this stuff. It's stuff which is actually integral, and it's stuff you see in the granddaddy and seminal city adventure, City State of the Invincible Overlord. You see in a little bit in Waterdeep and its companion box set, City System, more so as well. Like high generability. You see it in Backlin and Jewel of the Seas, and it's accompanying, well, not actually accompanying, but you should get it, Night Table by Gabor Lux. It then has random building and NPC generators, and this tells you to determine, yeah, well, what, depending, and it has, you want to know what buildings they run into. Well, roll on the district table. Oh, sorry, roll on the building table, modified by district modifiers, so that you can't encounter a temple outside of the temple district or nearby. And then it tells you what, if you need to know what's in a warehouse or in a merchant shop or in a craftsman shop, you can roll on that table. You then can find a floor plan for it. The floor plans are here. They're not in the appendix. That's maybe less useful, but yes. Though again, maybe that's because the others are meant to be shared with the players, I don't know. But you have like a bunch of, how many you have 17 floor plans. That's really useful, and you can generate them at any time. Okay, they're running into there, what kind of building are they in? You can generate how many NPCs are there. You can generate who the NPCs are, albeit on, it's a D20 table, and there's a male and female for each result, which is not like, there are 12 results, but they're weighted slightly, with 2 of them being 1 in 20 and the rest being 2 in 20. There's naming tables. So there's a bunch of stuff, again, that's just integral personality determination for those NPCs. There is a weird thing, by the way, it comes up with the NPC descriptions and elsewhere, where charisma is used for comeliness, you'll say a handsome charisma 16, or an ugly charisma 12, or charisma 7 person. It's a bit weird, partly because charisma doesn't represent that. Comeliness, which is a NAF stat, is meant to represent that, obviously. Yeah, so this is something you could just use for your game. It doesn't need to be in Lankhmar. You could use those, 4 pages of tables and 17 floor plans for your city off the shelf, pretty much, with bearing in mind whatever districts are meant to be in yours. And I think in general, if you have a grimy, murky city at the hub of your adventures, then you can use the rest of it too. So Chapter 8, Adventuring in Lankhmar, is very, very good. It is a shame, because I think that might be where there's meant to be encounter tables. It's a great shame about the lack of encounters. The monsters are fun though. That's a really strong section. That section, 7 and 8, which is the monsters and adventuring in Lankhmar. It's the best since the city districts. There are then AD&D conversion rules, which is basically, this is for first edition. The second edition version has second edition rules, including covering a wider array of player class. Rangers and paladins exist but have no spell casting. Assassins can wear armor. Thieves and fighters are obviously common. And yeah, spellcasters are all merged in, so magic users, illusionists, clerics and druids are all merged into either white wizards or black wizards, and this is good, have slightly different rules. White wizards have access to cleric and druid spells, black wizards have access to magic user and illusionist spells, and you can use it from either, they use spellbooks, both use spellbooks. Black wizards to advance beyond 5th or from 5th onwards, sorry, start getting weird deformities. White wizards cannot advance beyond 5th level unless wisdom is their highest attribute. So they are more limited. And we are, we're pointed towards a famous white wizard in the Mauser's trainer. The Mauser is a 3rd level. I think he's a black wizard, but this is okay. I think he's a black wizard because you only have to be evil or something. I don't know if I'm remembering rightly for whether it's this or I don't know. And it doesn't actually say what his magic user is. I thought, I don't know, maybe it's not black wizard. Oh no, he firmly allies himself to black wizard and end up in Lankhmar, so black magic. So yeah, he is a black wizard, but not high enough level that he has to be evil. So they can be of neutral evil alignment for the first 4 levels, then they must shift to evil. This means they can be of neutral but can shift to evil. That's Mauser is at 3rd, and so he is able to be neutral. There's one new weapon, the throwing dagger. There's some rules about spell use. Spells are basically a lot slower, and recovery takes longer, but there is a kind of innate spell detection ability for any spellcaster. So basically it's meant to make this a lower magic setting. There are fewer magic items. There are fewer magical abilities that you can use. Paladins and rangers don't have them. I said that paladins will have lay on hands, will have protection against evil, but they don't have access to spells at high levels, is what I mean. The wizards themselves, their spells are slow, like a segment equals a round. So basically, and you can be interrupted in that. So essentially, you no longer have the do I gamble, because the classic do I gamble to get off something that's fairly quick versus using a magic item if I can, or using my darts. Because as long as we win initiative, I've got a 50-50 depending on any special modifiers of going first. Here it's like no, they will have a chance to interrupt you because it will take at least a round, because their segment equals a round in terms of spellcasting time. Magic items just says about it being lower. It talks about multiple classes. Here the idea is that yeah, does it actually say how it works here properly? I think essentially it doesn't describe it very well. I need to check the text in the 2nd edition version, which I think just changes the rules. Because this is a weird, completely breaking the rules thing. But essentially it's a form of free dual classing that you can, it's not clear exactly how you're meant to start, but it gives you 7 possible combinations, and presumably you can advance them at different paces, given the Mauser stops advancing his magic user, and the way the classes go for the 3 triple class characters isn't even. So yeah, presumably there's something like that. It again then mentions the encounter tables and monster references. Gives arms and armor, weapons and armor amongst private citizens. This is more rules about dealing with stuff in Lankhmar, really. Employment for fighting men in Lankhmar. So that stuff is, in Chapter 10, arms and armor, is not necessarily... Actually, that's a weird thing. Chapter 10 is actually Lankhmar encounters. This is just mislaid out. But yeah, this should probably be part of Chapter 8. Chapter 10, Lankhmar encounters. This has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 main encounters, plus an adventure. We'll get there. The 2nd edition has like twice the number of encounters. A lot of these really are just encounters, but a lot of them are meant to be setting up heists. A couple also take you out of the city. So caravan escort, you're meant to take 10 wagons to Cocknagab across the continent of Lankhmar. The merchant, his bodyguards and his 2 lovely free-spirited daughters. This is a very Fafford in the Grey Mouser plot, isn't it? The pay is excellent, but the dangers are many. Clash-like bandits, desert nomads, lack of water, a traitor within the caravan, desert monsters, the henchman of a rival businessman who's racing a similar cargo to Cocknagab by sea. Some of them are just encounters, some of them are adventure scenes like that out of the city. There are several which are very obviously meant to set up a heist. So you're seeing this frame in a very, this is not a great chapter, or it's not a great set of encounters because there's not very many. There's 18. Some of them are adventure seeds. Some of them are just a random event, essentially, that doesn't matter much. Some of them are really setups for an adventure the PCs may choose to pursue, and this would be better sorted into kind of a city special encounter, so like city encounter table with a special encounter subsection, and adventure seeds. And this is obviously how plenty of books do that, isn't it? One of the early great examples of that I've talked about on the channel being the World of Greyhawk campaign setting, first edition by Gary Gygax. Well, only edition under that name, because From the Ashes is a sequel rather than a straight re-release. But yes, where at the end he just gives like 4 or 5 adventure outlines for frankly mad adventures that might just be fun for you to write. Here the seeds are shorter, but they're okay, but they're just a bit jumbled in. There is, however, an adventure, a 3-page adventure. That is not bad. It's reasonably efficient. These are 2 pages of setup and key, and there is some floor plans at the end. It's called the Carvian Elephant. It is for 9th to 12th level fighters and thieves. It's funny because it matters for move silently for the thieves, I grant. But the main, frankly, like the main challenges are probably not 9th to 12th level. At that point, 9th to 12th level, you're going to be weak on magic and magic items. And so there's a way in which that is balancing for that. Even if actually one of those is a magic user, you're not firing off magic missiles and sleep, you know, in the midst of combat, are you? And you don't have wands with a bunch of charges of those either. So there is a sense in which the lower power level is being slightly compensated for by higher PC level for adventures. There is, however, an 8th level black wizard who basically comes into it invisible and has a bunch of, like, has fireball, has magic missile, burning hands, can do a lot of damage, who's also trying to steal the jewels that you're looking for. This is an okay adventure. It's a decent adventure. There is an odd thing that one obviously very valuable room is completely missing treasure information. It's pretty generic in terms of it's just, here's a building, here's some guards, here's some the jewel you want, here's some rules for getting through. But it's all super functional. It's a really, basically, it's not a 1-page dungeon, but it's functionally as the 1-page dungeon heist, and it's better than most 1-page dungeons. It's just saying, look, this is a very basic way, and the things it has information about order of battle during the day and night, patrol patterns during the night, which is when it's presumed you're there. Because of the setup, these jewels are going out tomorrow. You've got tonight to get them, that sort of thing. There is, yes, some okay treasure knocking around. It's not very exciting. It's an odd one, you know. It's something where there probably should be just a bit more detail being put into the like, because it's just all treasure with bits of it being like, oh, this is bulky but not worth very much, or, you know, this is worth this. But, you know, it'd be nice to have a minor magic curio there or something like that, or a strange technological object, something a bit spicier. But the fact that it gives you everything you need to run a heist pretty much, and it does have this extra complication, which is Kizik, and he has a familiar too, who is basically a sort of quasit. It doesn't say really what he does other than that he's coming in invisible. But yeah, like, it's really functional, really solid, and exactly the kind of thing you should be doing in Lankhmar. Whether or not the level is right, I'm not sure. Playing time one evening. It's actually a quite professional edition. That is deleted from the 2nd edition. The 2nd edition does not have the geomorphs. It does not have, it might have the floor plans. It does not have the general principle of filling in the district record sheets. It doesn't have those. And it doesn't have the adventure. It weirdly has other stuff that is really helpful. Like, I do value that it has encounter tables, even if they're simple. The city encounter table is good in the 2nd edition. I do value that it has, you know, the human racial information. Yeah, you can see why some people are less sure of it. But I think the idea that you're like, oh, well, here this is a bit like Spartans get +1 constitution, Athenians get +1 intelligence. You know, it's obviously a ludic device rather than any wider comment, especially because it's all just about mingles are short but dexterous or something. That's literally it, for instance. I think, yeah, the The Evansari, I think, maybe -1 charisma because of how weirdly hairless they are, but get 4 times starting wealth. That's funny. I think that's good. But yes, it's nice they have that. But what the second edition loses is, though it has some good random tables, it basically strips out some of the others and some of the other elements of running a city adventure. And it sort of makes it, I think basically it just makes it a little less of a dedicated city book. And well, I say that, I'm not sure if that's quite the way I want to put it. The second edition does have a special chapter on the Silver Eel Tavern, which it has a different location, albeit it's not an adventure location. It does have the geomorphs and the floor layouts, but they are just there. They're not really presented as part of a wider system. And it has some new magic items, to be fair, as well. As I say, the good city encounter tables are good. It doesn't have the generating buildings and floor plans and NPCs inside them section. So basically, it gains one thing, the city encounter table, and loses the city district system and the random tables. The rest of it is sort of a bit of com-see, com-sar. I don't know if actually it really needs more detail on the NPCs. I don't know that it benefits. I actually quite like Monstrous Compendium layout, but I don't know if it is going to benefit from having all that extra information. Often you find that, like, for classic monsters, you don't gain much. You do for some specific like monsters where the layout really helps, actually. But like generally, and you can even get mistranslations. So yeah, I would say also a lot of the second edition text is the same as in the first. That was intentional. I think Pryor did retain a lot of it. To be fair to him, it wasn't a pure rewrite. Though it's enough of a rewrite and enough of a change that you're going to notice it if you think you're getting one and you get the other. I would recommend for, if it's one or the other, you can get the PDFs of these. If it's one or the other and you want something that really helps you run city adventures on the fly or with a bit of development and background, this is going to be better. The second one adds a bit more actually gameable material, but gets rid of an adventure you can run out of the book. So that's a shame. Neither, I think, give you lots on kind of what do adventures in Nehwon look like. They give you monsters, they give you tables in the second edition, but they don't give you lots of detail about the world. But then that's fine. It doesn't have to. It's just a city book. There are other supplements for that. There was a campaign setting book. I do recommend it. I do think it is a really useful city supplement and a really nice introduction to Lankhmar. So for me, I really like it. You'll hopefully know better yourself whether this is exactly what you need for a city supplement. But yes, with a few small changes, and certainly keep getting the stuff that it was missing, the stuff it promised but was missing, but perhaps also just a little more edge to kind of the plot hooks and stuff. The kind of, these are things you could do, these are the adventure scenes, these are the obstacles. And I think it could have been an all-time great. If you've read it, tell me what you think, and if you've run it, certainly as well. And tell me your other favourite city supplements in the comments. Till next time.